Alright, in this video we're going to model the body for Bob. So the best way to start for this is we're going to start with a box. So we'll just click and drag and make a box. I'm going to hit F4, make sure edged faces is turned on. Just make sure your box is centered. And we're going to add just a couple of segments to start out. So you could put a segment in each of the length, width, and height. And we'll just keep it simple like this for now. And then I'm going to hit F to go to the front view. And we'll move this up, and we're just going to start lining this up to his shirt in the background. So we're going to model his upper body and lower body separate. So we're going to end up modeling his shirt for the upper body, his pants for the lower body. And then we're going to do the hands and feet separate as well. This will make things easier to skin, and then we can reuse these parts on other characters later. Okay, so let's convert this to editable poly. We'll take half of it, so select these polygons and delete them. And then we're going to take this side, which we'll name Bob Body, and we'll just mirror this as an instance. And then, of course, we'll take that instanced half. You can right click and freeze it. If you want to hit Alt X first, make it see-through. Then right click, freeze selection. I'm going to take this first half here. And just because I prefer to change the color on the mesh and the edges, I'm going to open up the material editor. And I'm just going to assign a basic standard gray material to this. So I've got some in here, but I'll just grab this one. And I'm going to change the color to black. This way, when it's deselected, the edges are black. So it's just personal preference. You don't have to do that. So we need to line this up better. I'm actually going to right click and unfreeze all. So remember, when I do this, it's unfreezing the planes back here. So I'm going to freeze those again, and this is why we should keep things in separate layers. So I'm going to take these pieces here, and we'll create a new layer. So if I open up Layer Explorer, you can see these are actually already dropped into the Bob model layer, so they can stay right there. Just remember to keep Bob model layer active, and then everything that we create for the Bob character will be dropped in there. So next time, if I want to freeze these things, I can freeze them from here, and I can unfreeze them from here. So I'll take these two pieces and we'll go to the left view, and we need to kind of line this up in the middle of his shirt. So I'm going to hit Alt X again just to make them both see-through, and just basically move this pivot point up to the mid section of his body. And then I'll go back to perspective. We'll take this other half here and we'll freeze it again. And then we can start in the front view real quick. We'll select this half here that we're working on. We're going to go up to editable poly and just start pushing the verts around. So we'll take these verts here. We're going to take these and line them up to the top of his shoulder. This is where we're going to extrude his arm from. This one here, we can move up. So at this point, the head's getting in the way, so let's hide the head. I'm going to select the head, right click, hide selection. If you want to go up here in perspective, we can just take everything up here to do with the head and hide it. And we'll just focus on the body. So I'll go back to front view, back into modify, and start pushing these verts around. Okay, so this one I'll just push up here like this. We're going to put more edge loops through here to control this. Okay, so this one's the top of the arm. This one here, we might as well just grab this and move it up a bit. We'll line it up with the bottom of his arm. This will be the section where we can extrude the arm from. The bottom one here, we'll just push this in and just kind of line this up with his shirt in the front view for now. So something like this. We're just blocking things in at this point. So I'm going to hit L to go to the left view, do the same thing in this view. So I'm just going to start pushing verts in, and I'm trying to follow the shape of the body. Okay, so this one in the left view, you can see we need to pull this down. This is going to follow the edge of the collar of his shirt. So we can push all of these over like this, and we're basically outlining the drawing at this point. So these ones I'm just moving in. Don't worry about this edge back here, that'll go as we push these verts in. And then this one I'll pull up like that. And we're just roughly following the outline of the shirt. So this edge loop here, I'm going to highlight this. We want this to run down the center of his body. And this vert here should be in the middle of his arm. So let's just make sure that that's as straight as we can get it. Running through the center of the body. Okay, so this area here, we're going to need to start extruding an arm from. So if I go to perspective, you can see we have an area here. If we go to the front view, we've lined this up in the front view. If you look in the left view, it looks like the arm's a little higher. We're just going to roll with the front view here. And I'm going to take this edge right here. And if I hit P to go to perspective, you can see it's just this edge here. We're going to hit ring. We want to connect an edge loop right through here. So I'm going to hit, we're going to hit connect settings. Make sure this is centered and then click OK. And then these 4 polygons here, if you remember from the ball character, modeling the ball character's body, you should have taken 4 polygons like this and inset them to create a section for the arm. So again, if you're insetting like this and you're having a hard time controlling this, just hold Alt. It slows down the spinner and you can be more precise with it. And then click OK. Right now this doesn't matter. We're going to hit L, go to the left view, and we'll straighten this up here. So we want this to be square because we want to make a perfect circle, because we need to extrude a tube shape for the arm. So we'll start by taking the edges in the middle. And if it helps, you can hit Alt X so it's not see-through for a minute. We're just going to scale these flat in the view. Okay, so just a quick way to square this up. You might have to push them in as you're doing this and just shift them around a bit. But basically we just want to flatten this out. So you'll notice I keep hitting these up here just for the video. If you hit W, E, and R, those are the shortcuts. W, E, and R. Okay, but I'm going to keep selecting it up here. So just scaling this stuff in, making sure it's as flat and as square as possible. And then we're going to end up, you can still take these polygons and scale them in a bit, just try to make it square. But basically we want to take these 4 corners once we've squared that area up, and just take the 4 corners only and scale them in on the Y and X, and that'll round out that area. Now we can extrude the arm from here. Okay, so again, if you want to hit Alt X now, just make sure this is lining up in the middle as close as you can get it. Okay, so this, again, the left view and the front view are off a bit. I want to just try to make this as centered as possible. If you go to the front view, this is where we're coming from. So normally you want to draw your characters in the T-pose. So this character has been drawn with bent arms, which is making this a little more difficult to follow. But we're going to model the character's arms out. So there's the T pose and the A pose. Bob here is going to end up in the A pose, which is totally fine. So I'm going to hit extrude. Okay, so this is kind of between a T pose and an A pose, I guess. But we're going to push this all the way out to where his wrists should be. Okay, so it should be roughly around here. And then I'm going to click OK. And the way we're going to model this shirt is we're going to have the sleeves open at the end. So we're going to hit delete. We don't need those polygons at the end. Okay, so up to this point everything's quads, and it's just basic blocking in that we're doing. Okay, so we're going to need to fix things. We're going to take this edge loop here, and you can actually push this out a bit. So if we go to the front view, if you switch to local at the top here, you should be able to pull this along the Z-axis, and it should follow the direction of the arm. But we're just pulling this out a little bit. We're going to have to start pushing some of these verts around to make it smooth. But for now, we're just blocking things in. Okay, so we just pulled this straight out on the Z-axis. So what we can do now is we can cut in the elbow. I'm going to hit G to turn off the grid because the grid's starting to get in the way. But if I select all these edges here, we can use connect settings. And you can connect one segment. We could do this in a chamfer it, or you can just hit the up arrow, and we'll go to 3 segments and pinch them in like this. Okay, so these are the most basic edge loops we need for Bob's arm to bend. Okay, so we have an edge loop in the center, and then we have an edge loop on this side and this side. So this gives us vertices that we can skin to the bones on either side, and then one in the middle, or one edge loop in the middle for the bones to share. Okay, so once we get into skinning, we'll go through that again. If I hit P, go to perspective, just make sure everything lines up and it's straight. You can always go and grab these edge loops because you can see they're a little bit twisted, and you should be able to scale those in the local axis as well. But if you switch to edge constraints, this will make sure that it doesn't deform. And then you can actually keep this in view, and we'll just scale these flat. And we're just trying to keep these things as straight as possible. Okay, so if you go to the front view, you'll see that they're on an angle, but if we double click each edge loop, and you can hit F to go to the front view. With edge constraints on, we can just rotate these and straighten them up. Alright, so these should be pretty much perfectly straight and lined up with the middle elbow area. Alright, so let's go to perspective. We've got the arm blocked in. We need these edge loops around the shoulder as well. So we can take this edge here and hit ring, and we're going to connect one edge loop. So we'll set the segments to 1, pinch to 0, and we'll slide this back just in front of the shoulder here. So this edge loop gives us vertices that this upper arm bone can control. Then we have an edge loop in the middle here, which is going to be shared between the upper arm bone and the collarbone or the chest bone. And then we need another one on this side. So we're going to hit ring, connect, and we'll slide this in. So this gives us another 3 edge loops to help us control the shoulder area. And again, we're going to push all these verts around later and straighten that up, but we're just blocking things in. Okay, so we'll need to fix the body, and we need to fix the neck area. So let's start by taking the polygons on the bottom, and we'll just hit delete, and that leaves that open. And then we'll cut in some extra edges, and we'll clean up around the neck area. Okay, so we're going to want to divide the body up a little bit more so that we can get in and create kind of a hole or opening for the neck. So we can start by grabbing an edge right here, hitting ring, and connecting an edge loop across this side of the body. So we'll keep that one centered. Just click OK. And then up here we've kind of got this area that we can pull around for the neck. And we could start by just grabbing these polygons here, and we can hit delete. That'll give us an opening for the neck, and you can kind of push some of these verts around a bit and just spread this out. This is going to be the front of his collar. I'm going to switch back to view here. So we can pull this down, straighten these verts out here that go across his chest, and just start pushing things around. And now we're really just starting to shape the top neck area here. Okay, so if we go to the left view, it's going to be easier to see what we're trying to do here. So we've lined this one up with the top. We're going to start pulling these up as well. If you have edge constraints turned on, remember to turn that off. And we'll just start pulling some of this up like this. Okay, so we're just shaping the top of the neck for now. We're going to cut more edges through here to reshape that part of his body. But we just want to make sure we're following kind of the collar area for his shirt. And if I go back to perspective, try to be careful not to move the verts away from the center, because we don't want to mess up our symmetry here. And just kind of flesh it out like that. If you go to the front view now, you can hit Alt X and you can see where we want to pull these over just to match the drawing in the back. So you can start to see how the neck area is forming here. We've got this V cut in the shirt, and it's going to come down to about here. So just make room for that. Push these verts in like that and just try to keep it close to the drawing. Later we're going to extrude the collar from here. We're going to have to cut in some nice clean edges to do that. But right now, again, we're just blocking things in. Okay, so we've got some edges back here that we can push around. So there's an edge that comes from the arm. If I hit Alt X, you can see this. So we'll just kind of push these out like this on an angle. And this should just start to form the curve in his back here. And again, you can go to the left view. If you want to select both verts and hit L, you can see in the left view where we're trying to line up to. So you could take all the verts here that are connected to this edge, and I'll just show you in perspective what I have selected. Okay, so the 3 verts up to this edge of his body here, and you can go to the left view and just scale them down in the Y to keep them straight. And that just helps to keep things organized on the mesh. Okay, so this is going to come out from the arm. We can start straightening stuff like this out, and you can almost see another edge loop around the body here. We're just going to start pushing these out a bit, and underneath the armpit here we're going to spread that out too. This kind of web area is going to make it easier for us to skin the shoulder when we get to that point. Okay, so things are still looking like a box, but we're going to fix that as we go. And before we start cutting in more edges and making it more difficult, we can start to push these edges back to round out the body. So when you're box modeling like this, you want to look at things on kind of a 3/4 angle or a 3/4 view, and we're going to grab edges up the side of the body where it looks like a box. Okay, you can come right up to the top here, and we're going to push back and in like this. Okay, so we're looking at the shape of the body here. So we want this to start to round out. Okay, so as we push that in there, we're going to have to affix and adjust this area here. Okay, so you're kind of shaping and sculpting things at this point because we've blocked everything in. Now we just need to shape things, and then we'll put in a few more supporting edge loops. Okay, so same thing back here. Let's grab the body edges up to this point here on the corner. Okay, so we're not going to grab this one. We're just grabbing up to the corner here, and I'm going to push this back and in. And you're really looking at the bottom. You want to look at the shape here. So you can, by doing this, you can see we need to pull the back out as well, and we'll have to pull the front out a bit because we want his body to have more of a round tube shape. Okay, so again, if you do that here, we might have to adjust in this shoulder area, and we're just starting to smooth things out. Okay, so from here we can just grab individual verts, straighten them out, make sure that the body is conforming properly, and that our edge loops are nice and straight. So look at your entire edge loop. If you double click, make sure you have nice curves wrapping around the body, because when we subdivide this after, Things are going to subdivide nicer if these curves are nice and smooth. Okay, so right here where you have things kind of jutting around, you can keep a cleaner mesh if you keep clean edge loops. So again, just looking on angles, kind of pushing and pulling things around, smoothing things out. We're going to need to cut more edges up here for the neck, so we'll get to that in a minute. We might even have to reflow some of these edges, because right now we might want to cut stuff across here and maybe remove this edge here so we don't end up with a triangle if we do that. So probably one of the more complicated parts on this model is going to be the collar and the way we cut that in. So we'll come back to the collar towards the end. Let's just make sure we've got the bottom of the shirt set up nice. So we'll check in the left view, and again you can see where we need to pull up some of the verts. Let's try to follow the drawing in the background as close as you can, and we can adjust some of the stuff later when we model the pants and just kind of tuck the shirt in. Let's do this from the front view. Okay, so looking in perspective, again I want to pull the back edge out because the back is kind of flat. So we can go right up to here and just kind of pull this out a bit and just try to keep the shape of the body round. So when we subdivide later, we don't want this to still look like a box. And in fact, we can start using open subdivision to see what it's looking like. We'll just pull this front one out a bit. And at this point, you can already go ahead and put on open subdivision. Okay, so again, you can use Turbo Smooth or open subdivision. Open subdivision is newer. This was developed by Pixar. And one of the bonuses of open subdivision is that you can crease edges. So once we get into the collar area, we'll have a look at creased edges with open subdivision. Okay, so again, don't worry about the center seam. Later on, we're going to have to weld these two halves together, and we won't be able to model the collar until we attach the halves. So it would be possible to start modeling it now, and maybe we'll block it in now, but we're going to have to weld the two halves to make sure that the back doesn't split. Okay, so in the end, open subdivision will be set to 2 iterations. And then we can go back down to editable poly and we can just toggle this on and off to see how things are looking. Okay, so we're going to end up extruding parts of the bottom of the shirt to kind of create a folded, tucked in look, but we'll do some of that after we attach the two halves. For now, we're going to add in a couple more supporting edge loops for the body. So when we rig this with the spine, the body needs to be able to bend back and forth. So we need a couple of edge loops in here to allow that to happen smoothly. So you can hit hit ring first and then connect. And we'll just cut in 2 edges like that. And if we do that, we're going to want to go around and make sure it's straight. So again, you can try and move the verts around, but if you just grab the edge loop like this, you can just turn on edge constraints. This is just a quick way to flatten your edge loops. Scale it out like that, and then if you want to compensate for the curve of the body, just rotate it back like this. So same thing here. Scale it flat, and then rotate it back. And then you can go ahead and turn off the edge constraints. Set it back to none. Okay, so far this is what it's looking like. You can always hit Shift Q and start checking the renders just to see how smooth it is. Any areas that might be pinching we can fix after. And we'll deal with the tucked in part of the shirt once we attach the halves. And we'll do the same thing with the collar. once we clean up a few more edges here. So back here, I was looking at this edge earlier, and I just want to cut this back and clean it up. So what I'm going to do to make things easier is I'm going to select this half, I'm going to right click and isolate selection. Okay, so that isolates the part we're working on for now. And I'm going to go back into editable poly. And one of the cleanest ways, if you want to avoid using the cut tool, one of the cleanest ways to cut edges across is to just grab edges like this that you're going to connect to. You can hit connect, you can slide your edge down to where you want it. So I just want one edge here, somewhere around here. And then you can grab the two verts across the missing part and hit Control Shift E. So that's the shortcut for connect. Okay, so I've kind of cleaned up this area so I have a better edge across there, but now I have a triangle at the top. So what I'm going to do is just recut this edge so it doesn't come to a point here to form a triangle. I'm going to have it connect up here and turn that back into a big quad, and then we'll connect more supporting edge loops for the neck through here. So what you want to do is take this edge, you can hold Control and hit remove, and then this time we'll use the cut tool. So if you turn on vertex, you can use cut. We're going to cut from this vertex here, so make sure your icon changes to the tiny cursor, and then we're going to land up here just like that. Okay, so now we've cleaned up quads. So if we select that edge and hit ring, let's see where that takes us. That takes us all the way down the body like this. If I want to start connecting edges around this neck, I'm probably not going to want to connect it like that. So I might have to reflow some of the edges on the front here as well. So just kind of focusing on these quads right here and the way these edges come up to another point here. I'm going to want to reflow these edges so that I have a better band of quads wrapping around this part of the body. And if you look here, we've got a point here, and this would be a good spot to put an edge across the body. So we can cut this across just to visually see what's happening. So if you want to hit the cut tool, we can cut this time from the corner here right through to this vertex we've got at the bottom of the collar. Okay, so now this is creating a band of quads through here, but now we've got these two triangles. And you could just remove this edge here and technically have a quad, but that's not going to be a clean quad. So instead, I'm going to reflow these up the same way we did with that one at the back. So we're going to end up with nice quads going up the top here. So we'll start with this one. Just grab this one here and we'll hold Control, hit remove. The only reason we're holding Control when we hit remove is to remove any verts that are left behind. So I'm going to hit cut. We're going to cut from this corner up to the top of the neck. Okay, so that cleans up that section there. And we've already cleaned this up now to have quads except for this triangle right here. So what we'll do is we'll just go into edge and we'll insert a vertex along this edge here. And then you can take that vertex and we'll just kind of pull this down and off to the side here. So we'll shift that around later, but this way we have, if you select this edge now and hit ring, you can see now our ring of edges goes along the back. Okay, so back here I'm probably going to push some of this up a bit because again I'm looking at the edges and making sure they flow in nice curves. So I'm going to be pushing and pulling the verts around quite a bit, trying to get this to shape out properly. And again, you want to look on angles, just make sure that things are staying nice and round. Okay, so again, we'll come back to that later. Get back to this part here. So we're going to hit ring and we're going to connect a couple of edges through here. And the extra verts down this side will help us form that collar later, but right now we need to have at least two more edges running through the neck. So we'll go ahead and hit connect keep these in the middle, and you can go ahead and add 2, and then we'll click OK. So these edges are a little bit crooked. We'll have to just kind of push the verts around and straighten these out and make sure these are curving nice again. So you can turn on edge constraint, and we'll just start to kind of fan these out. And you want to try to keep the distance of the verts on your edges kind of spread out evenly here. Okay, so this area here we're going to end up pushing around later, but let's just go around and fix these, kind of pull this one down a bit. Try to get these to wrap around the back better. Okay, so notice I'm rotating on a side and pushing this one along the X and Z. And just try to get these to curve around the body better. Just make it nice and smooth. So if you spend the time keeping your edges clean and smooth now, it'll be less work to have to do later when we start putting this all together. Especially when we put the 2 halves together. Okay, I'm going to turn off edge constraint or set it back to none. And just look at this from the top, start to round out the shape of the collar. And again, make sure we have a nice curve here. So the collar we can get back to once we attach the 2 halves. It'll be easier to extrude the rest of that shape out. So at this point we pretty much have most of this blocked in. This would be a good chance to go around and just kind of spread verts around the shoulder, make sure everything here is nice and smooth. Turn on show end result, see how things are looking. If there's any areas kind of bulging out or looking strange, this is your chance to fix it before we weld the halves together, because the rest of this we're going to have the halves welded together to deal with the bottom and the opening on the collar. So just keep checking all your angles, just pushing and pulling verts around, trying to make this as smooth as possible. Okay, so there's an area here under the armpit that we can fan out a bit, and we want to make this kind of a loop around here. And again, this is just going to help when we start skinning the shoulder to have this kind of web with our edge loops in here. So you might want to look at this by deselecting and just seeing open subdivision without the edges. So you can hit F4 and just kind of have a look and see what it's looking like. We can always fix this stuff later. It's just going to be easier to fix as much of it as we can now while it's in half. So I can see a little pinch under here. I'm going to check that out. Straighten this out a bit here. So you should know at this point that if you click on a vert and hit Z, it'll zoom into it. And then you can hold Alt and your middle mouse button to rotate around. So these are just tips I'm assuming everybody knows at this point. Alright, we'll leave it like this for now, and then we'll go ahead and weld the halves together. And we can always fix some of this after if we have to. We can use the symmetry tool, but again, I like to avoid that when I can. Okay, so we'll check that one more time. You can even do a render. See, it's pretty clean in here, and I think it's safe to go ahead and attach the two halves. So we haven't been saving the file. We should start saving the file. So I'm going to go to Save As, and before we were modeling with the head, I'm going to start naming this body. So Bob Body. You can keep the number going. So this will be Bob Body. I'll leave it at 20, just going in increments from the head. And I'll hit the plus. Or sorry, we'll hit save. Next time we come in, we'll hit the plus. So we have all those backups. If anything goes wrong, you can always go back to an older file and kind of start where you think you might have messed up. But at this point, this is pretty good. We're going to unhide the other half. So right now we're in isolation mode, so we'll just go up to End Isolate. And then we're going to attach these two halves and weld the middle vertex. Okay, so to weld the halves, we're going to have to unfreeze the other half of the shirt. So I'm just going to use the Layer Explorer. And you've got the other Bob Body here. Just unfreeze it. In order to attach these and weld them, we have to first take the open subdivision, right click and delete. That deletes open subdivision off of both of them. You can hit Alt X on the other half. I'm going to take the first half and attach the second half to it, but you can see I can't do that yet because it's still an instance. So I have to take that side, right click, convert to editable poly, and now you can attach them. So I'm going to take this half, hit attach, attach that side, go to the front view, and we're going to weld the verts down the middle. So you want to carefully select all your verts just down the center, and then kind of zoom in. You can see these ones here we don't want selected. I'm going to hold Alt to deselect them. So I just want to weld up to this point here. These ones I'll probably push out later. So just make sure you have everything selected down the middle. You can check the back just to make sure. And then in the front view, if you want to scale these together, you can scale them flat in the Y just to make sure they're perfectly flat together. And then we'll open up Weld Settings, and we'll right click on the spinner and just tap up once to get the lowest threshold. And then you can click OK, and it should weld everything no problem. And then you can add open subdivision back on here, and when we add this and bump it up to 2, if anything didn't weld properly, you'd see a hole in the mesh. Okay, so everything's good here, and this will be a good time to save the file again. Alright, so from here we can go ahead and model the bottom of the shirt a bit better. So we'll select this, go into Editable Poly, and you can grab an edge loop or you can grab the open border like this. And just from the left view, we'll just kind of check. Again, we can hit Alt X, jump between left and front. We're going to try to roughly line it up between these two. If you want to grab verts and shift them around still, you can. And we'll just try to straighten this up a bit. And if you grab the border, we'll go back to perspective. If you hold shift, you'd be able to extend this down, but what we're going to do is hold shift and use the scale tool, and we'll just tuck this in a bit like this. So we're going to do this, and then you could even go up, so we'll hold shift and just push this up a bit, and I'm going to hit Alt X and have a look at this so you can see how that creates kind of a nice round area for the shirt there. If you wanted this to look more folded or tucked in, we can add another edge loop through here, and we could hit connect. I'll connect one, just slide it down a bit, kind of like this, so close to the bottom edge. Click OK. While that's selected, you can turn on show end result, and you could scale this out. So I'm scaling out in all directions, and you can kind of puff the shirt out like this. Alright, so that's just a quick tip or trick. for creating more shape or form to the shirt at the bottom. And that's how we're going to do the bottom of the shirt. So once we model the pants and line it up, we might shift things around and kind of tuck it in better. But for now, that's good. We could do that with the cuff of the sleeve, but we're going to leave that the way it is. Alright, so we're getting close. The next part is one of the trickier parts. We need to cut in the shape for the collar and extrude the collar out and flip it down. So we're going to go through and cut in some edges that we can extrude out, and we're going to make this pointy collar area. Alright, so for the collar, we just need to clean up some of the verts here first. So I'm going to go in and I'm actually going to take these verts that we've left open, and I'm just going to scale these together and weld them. So we're going to weld these together in the middle here. And then we're going to cut in a line up here close to the top of the collar. So close to the opening where we can extrude this collar shape and pull it down. So if we go to the left view, you can zoom in. So first of all, this is a chance to take these areas on the outside and clean them up again real quick. So if I hit Alt X, I'm going to make sure I push these in so that they line up better with the drawing again. So make sure that we're in here tight. Just something like this. Even the back here, let's pull this whole section of the back out. Just make sure it lines up. And I'll start to clean up the opening around the neck here one more time. Okay. So we're going to connect an edge around the top here. So we'll hit ring and connect. We're going to place this one pretty close to the top like this. So slide it up something like that. If we look at it in perspective, you'll see where this ends up. And I'm going to click OK. And we need to grab a couple polygons around the top here. So you could hold Shift and grab this whole ring. And then we'll just hold Alt and deselect these 4 polygons on the front. So we're going to end up extruding this section out and then flipping this down. So if you open up extrude settings, make sure this is set to local normal. And we're just going to push this out a bit, something like this. And you can click OK once you get this out there. And we're going to pull this down and we'll have to scale it out. So you can use the scale tool. We'll just scale this out like this. Okay, we'll just make sure it's not sticking through for now. And then we can go around and fix things after. So basically this will be the bottom part of the collar. So we're going to take the edges on the top here. You can just manually select them. And we'll scale those out even further, just a bit like this. And you can pull those down and back so it sits on top. Okay, so it might not quite line up. You might have to rotate it a bit or move it around a little bit different just to get it to line up like this. And this top part here, oops, I'm going to grab these 2 verts, just kind of pull this in a bit, make it tighter. Make sure it doesn't intersect like that. Okay, so we've got this section like this. If we turn on show end result, you can see what it looks like with open subdivision turned on. I'm going to take this outer edge and just push it out a little bit further so it sticks out better. So you can kind of scale it out and just want to make kind of a flat area underneath the collar here. Something like this. Okay, so we want to do something like this for the top edge here as well. So if you select your edge here and hit ring, you can hit connect settings, slide this one up towards the top. So something like this, just leave a gap. Then click OK. And we're just going to select the top edges here. And we're going to pull these out. Okay, so you'll get to there, and then we'll pull this out and up. Something like that. So that gives us an edge at the top of the collar. Okay, so far, if we turn on show and result, this is where we're at. Okay, so I'm going to turn off show and result. We want to make the corners of this collar pointier, so we'll turn that back on again real quick, and we want to make this area in the front sharper. So there's a couple things we can do, fairly simple. First of all, just to deal with this corner part, let's grab an edge here. We're going to hit ring. We're going to connect a supporting edge close to this end here. Alright, so that edge here is going to help keep that pointy part on the collar. So if we show on result, you can see how that works right there. So we can clean this up by moving some verts around, but we'll come back to that part after. Let's deal with this part right here. So for this, we just need to pull some of these verts that we already have here closer to the middle, and that will help from this spreading out. So right now, open subdivision is pulling the geometry up towards the closest verts up here. So we can just grab the verts that we have, and we're going to pull them down and move them in closer to the verts in the center here. So these edges here, we don't want to change them too much, but we're going to kind of flow this on an angle towards the middle. Okay, so we need to work on both sides at the same time. So I'm selecting the verts on either side. And you could try turning on edge constraints and pulling this down, but it's not going to work the way we want it to right now. So we have to do this without them. And we're going to pull this down. We'll scale it in. And then we'll push it back so that it's flat with the rest of the shirt. Okay, so we're just trying to get these close to the middle here. So something like this. You might have to individually grab the verts at the top here. Just make sure you're working on both sides at the same time. And we'll kind of pull these over. We can come back and finesse that after. But we need to do the same thing, working our way down and out with the verts that we have here. So I'm going to scale these in, and I'll just keep pushing these down, and we're going to flow this out from here. Try to keep this shirt kind of flat here. We'll go back and fix that stuff after, but I'm just going to keep working my way down and create a nice curve out from the middle here. So push this one in like that. Again, make sure you push it back, and this one as well. Just scale it in so that we've got something like this. Okay, so these ones here were already pointing out the wrong way anyway, so we'll just scale them in a bit, fix them up. Okay, so we'll try to keep this flowing in a nice angle up like this. And then we'll fix these ones in the middle. So if we turn on show and results, we've got something like this now. Okay, so we're getting pretty close with that. You can hit Shift Q to render it and see. And if we want to tighten that up further, we just need to keep pulling these verts in closer. So these are the ones that are going to help keep the sharp point in the collar here. But as you're pulling them in, you have to push them back and just kind of work with them. So always checking from all angles and just making sure that your geometry is staying as smooth as possible. Okay, so this here, I'm going to take these, just kind of scale them out a bit and then push them up just to keep a nice arc in my lines here. Okay, so I'm looking at lines this way and arcing over this way. So show end results, we have a pretty nice looking opening there. Alright, so we could go up and we could try to fix this area here. Could probably just pull some verts around to fix that one. Looks like these verts under here maybe could get pulled out a bit. Just remember, now we're not using symmetry. So if you're going to adjust one side, grab the same verts on the other side, and then you can pull them down and out from there. Also, turn on show end result and you can see how it's affecting the area. So before these were up here, just pull them down like that, and then that's pretty good. So if you render that, that doesn't look too bad. You could keep playing with this and tighten it up even more, but I think we can move on from this point. Okay, so let's just turn on show end result. Maybe have a quick look in the left view, hit Alt X. If you want to pull this down to match the drawing, you can, but just make sure you carefully select the verts on the outside of your collar. So I want these verts here. If I grab that group on that side, I'm going to grab the same group over here as well. You can hit Alt X to see through. Alright, so if I hit left view, Alt X, then I can pull this down and just try to match the drawing. Turn on show end result to make sure, because the subdivision is going to pull it back a bit. And even here, so if I try to grab these in the view like that, just make sure, maybe rotate to the side a bit, make sure you're not grabbing anything in the middle, and then we can line it up like that. I think these ones at the top need to come up, and it's a little pointy, so I think I'll grab that whole part and just drop it down a little bit. And you can check in the front view as well, just make sure we're following the drawing. Okay, so maybe the color, the point part needs to go out. So at this point you can grab these on either side of the mesh and just scale them away, and that's one way you could do that. Okay, so with the show end result turned on, this is what we're getting at this point. Alright, so that's looking pretty good to me. And if we hit Shift Q, this is what we've got. You can see kind of some pinched areas in here, and to fix that, just need to go in and see which verts need to be pulled out. So there might be some sections that we can pull around in here. You can kind of see these verts here need to be dropped down a bit still. So if I drop those down, maybe pull them back, just keep in mind the curve, trying to keep the curve equal for those edge loops. And again, if you have verts on either side of the mesh at this point, you can scale to push them in and out. Alright, so there are kind of big gap areas in here. If we wanted to clean that up or add extra supporting edge loops in there, we could just hit ring and connect another edge right through here. This might help with the skinning later, so I would connect one right through the middle, and it just gives you a few more verts and edges that you can adjust to help keep the shape of the mesh. I'm going to keep those out for now. I might come back to that later. Okay, so we don't have to put those in, we can leave it like this. When we subdivide, this is what it looks like right now. Okay, so I'm trying to show you the bare minimum amount of edges that you would need to put in here. You can always put a few extra edges if you want to create extra creases or anything like that on your own character. And I'm going to just take this and push this out a little bit more. Okay, so let's unhide the head. We'll unhide the head and then we'll be able to make further adjustments to make sure everything is starting to fit together. Alright, so let's right click and unhide the head. We're going to unhide all. And now that the head's here, we can see where we're going to have to fix parts around the collar. So we're going to have to pull some parts out there. And if we go to the left view, we can just go in here and start grabbing some verts and fixing this. We want to make sure this matches with the neck on the character. So we can hit Alt X, and if there's any sections here we have to pull back, we can go to the front view and we can see we want to scale this out so that it fits the neck a bit better. But if we look close at the neck itself, we might want to go into the neck and scale part of the neck in as well and make the neck thinner. So maybe we can grab the head here, and I'll grab this edge loop around here and I'll just start scaling these in a bit. And if I'm going to scale it, I'm going to scale it in each axis at the same time. So we're tapering this in all the way. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the shirt. You can hit Alt X, just toggle that on and off. And then from here I'll just push the collar out a bit so we can go into Editable Poly. And I'm going to grab from the left view, I want to grab these verts across here. So make sure you click and drag so we're getting the verts on both sides of the mesh. And then we can just scale these away to make room in here. Okay, so as long as nothing's colliding through, this should be good for now. We might have to make some small adjustments later after we start skinning as well. If there's any mesh collisions happening, we might have to come back to Editable Poly and fix it. Okay, so for now, this is lining up. I want to look at one more thing on the shirt, and if we go down to Edit Poly, turn off Show and Result. These edge loops in here that we've kind of crunched together to support this V-neck, I'm going to take these and scale them in a bit, and I'm going to put another one through here to support this area. Just because we have these big open quads like this, for the purposes of skinning, I want to make sure we have one more edge in there so that the upper body will bend and deform properly when we skin it to the rig. So what we can do here is we'll go to Vertex, turn on Edge Constraints, and without using symmetry, we can just grab the vertices going up the sides on both sides at the same time. And we only need to go up to about here and just scale them together on the X-axis to bring them in. Okay, so again, we want to make sure the edges are curved properly, so I'll fix these ones up here. And then we'll just ring, so select an edge and hit ring. We'll connect one right in the middle on this side, and then we'll do the same thing over here. And then this vert here that's kind of jutting out, I still have edge constraints turned on, so I'm going to scale that in just a bit. And from here, we're pretty close to being done with the shirt. But if there's any minor things you want to fix at this point, you can go in and just kind of tweak things like the shoulders here. Maybe you're sticking out too far. I might want to pull this in a little bit more. And the way I'm doing this without using symmetry is just selecting the same verts on each side and then scaling them away or towards each other. Alright, so you could spend more time just fixing and finessing the mesh, But at this point, for now, we're going to say that the shirt is done, and we're going to move on to the pants. So we'll start blocking in the pants. The pants are easy to model. So once we get the pants done, we can have a look at everything together, and then that'll be the shirt and pants done, and we can move on to the hands and feet. So don't forget to save. Alright, so for the pants, we'll start the same way with a box. So I'm just going to create a box down here, and just make sure it's centered. And then we'll move it up, and you can go to the left view, and we'll just kind of line it up with the midsection here. And then back in the front view, we can go into the modify panel and adjust the length, width, and height from here. Just make sure it fills the outside area of the drawing. So we'll bring it up here like this, and then we'll add a segment in each direction just to divide it up. And if we check in the left view, if you want to adjust the length from here, you can, but then we'll go to perspective, and we can convert this to editable poly, and we'll actually go to the front view and just delete half, and we'll model half at once. So in the perspective again, you can actually take the top two polygons here and just delete them. And we're going to end up extruding the pant legs from the bottom here. So we can take this and we can go up and mirror an instance, and then click OK. We'll just freeze this half, and then we'll work on this half here. So we'll start by rounding this out. You can take the edges here, and while it's still really simple, it's easy to just grab these and pull them back now before we start adding more edges. And you could actually select the verts instead, and then this will let us scale them back as well. So we can go like this, use the scale tool, scale back like that, and then we've got a round area for the pants to start. Now through here we want to extrude the pants down, but we also need to keep the center part divided. So I'm going to hit ring, and we'll connect another edge here, and just take that edge loop, scale it flat, and then we'll move it towards the center like this. So go to the front view, we'll hit Alt X, just make sure it lines up with this part here where we're going to extrude the leg from. And then we'll go back to perspective, and if you need to scale that out, you can scale it out just to keep this flowing in a round direction here. These edge loops need to stay round and curved. Alright, so we want to extrude the pants from here, but I'm going to go ahead and put another edge loop through the center here, and then we're going to take these 4 polygons here, and we'll just extrude them straight down. So you can go to the front view for this, but we're going to pull these all the way to the bottom like this, and then we can go around and fix the shape. We'll put a supporting edge loop up here. This is where the leg's going to bend from, so we can put that in now. We'll hit ring, connect settings, and just slide this up towards the base of the leg. So that's our first edge loop under the leg where the leg should bend. And then from here, with this edge loop selected, you could actually grab the verts. We'll go to the front view, grab all the verts around that edge loop, and then grab all the verts at the bottom. And we can go to the left view and just scale this back. Okay, so now we've got the shape for Bob's leg here, and if we check in perspective, we can start pulling things out and making this round. So for starters, we'll take that vert at the very bottom, just pull it over here to keep it straight, and then we're going to pull out this edge here. So to pull this edge out, we'll grab it from here, but then we have to go up here and grab this section as well. And we'll just pull this back in like that, just to create the round tube shape for the leg. Okay, so just by looking at the bottom, you can see where we need to adjust things to make it better. So you can grab this edge here, and we'll just kind of pull it back and down like that. Do the same thing with this back edge, and just try to keep this as round as possible. Might take that edge there and pull it back in. Okay, so if we do this now before we cut in edge loops for the knee, it's just easier to select the one edge on the side of the leg and do it that way. And again, you can grab all the polygons like this, and you can still scale these together like that to keep it round. So we're going to end up tapering the leg out, but we'll cut in the edge loops for the knees first. If you go to the left view, we can see where everything's lining up here, and same thing in the front view. And if you need to, you could hit grow. If you have to pull this over a bit, you can. I'm just going to leave it where it is for now. So in the front view again, we can grab all the edges across the leg, and we're going to put in our 3 edge loops that will keep the knee together. So if you hit connect, we'll center this edge loop down here, and we'll just add in our 2 extra segments. So we have 3 segments in total that we're going to pinch together, and this is where the knee will be able to bend. And then we'll click OK. So we'll go to the left view, and you can see in the drawing that Bob's knees were drawn bent forward a bit, and we actually want to do this for rigging purposes as well. So when we set up the rig with Cat, if the legs are perfectly straight, when you go to animate, the legs might bend backwards like this and give you chicken legs. So we're going to take these and just slightly bend your character's knees forward. And if you want to line it up better with the drawing, you can push this up a bit. Then I'll take the middle edge loop and pull it out just a bit to make sure that this is curving properly. And you don't have to pull it all the way out to the edge of the drawing like this, but we'll just push it out close. And then from here, we can start pushing verts out or grabbing edge loops like this. And if you right click on scale, you can just use the offset screen mode, and you can push this out. We can hit Alt X, and if we need to push any of this over at this point, we can do that. You can either grab all the verts, push it around like this, and then back in perspective. We'll just make sure things are lining up. So up here at the top, if you go to the front view, I'm going to hit Alt X, and I'm just going to start pushing things around so that it lines up better. So with Bob's knees, they kind of buckle out to the side a bit. And then up here, I'm just going to start pulling verts around and trying to line it up with the drawing again. And then I'm going to try to push and spread things out. So that I have nice curves wrapping down the leg. And again, in the end, we're going to have open subdivision on this, so we can put that on and start looking at it with open subdivision, and that'll help us determine where we're pushing and pulling verts around. So I'll throw that on now, and we can set that to 2 iterations, and then we can see where we need to fix the mesh, but it's already looking pretty good. The bottom here, it's turning into this weird nub because we need to go into editable poly and just open this up. So select these polygons at the bottom, and now you can hit delete. So if you wanted to fan this out or even create like a bell bottom shape, we could add a couple more edges at the bottom here. So I'm going to set these all back to 1, 0, 0, and then I'll slide this down. And then you could take the bottom cuff area of the pant and just scale it out a bit. And again, you can turn on show end result and just see what's happening here. So if you want that to curve nicer, you can add another edge loop on top of that as well. You don't have to put these ones in, but it does create a nicer shape for the pants at the bottom. Okay, so we've got something like that. So from the bottom to the knee, everything looks good. We just might want to push some verts around up here and try to shape this area better. So I'm going to turn off show end result. You can see the back is still very square. Might help to just isolate it for a minute. So I'm going to isolate selection. And then just focus on trying to make this back area around his butt rounder. So I'm going to start pulling some of these verts and edges back a bit and just try to round this out. And if you look down on an angle, you can see where you might want to start pushing edges around like this and just try to create a nice smooth area back here. Okay, so same at the front. Grab this corner here. We don't want it to look like a box, so we're just pulling these edges around. So I might grab these two verts here and just kind of pull them up a bit. And then when we end isolate, we can see what it's looking like. Might want to take the back verts here, kind of pull them out just to give it a little more of a rounder area at the back. And then look on the 3/4 views and just kind of pull these out. Okay, so let's end isolate, see what everything's looking like. We can continue fixing this once we attach the two halves together. So we have this one edge loop in here, which I might actually pull down a bit. We'll spread that out a little bit. And then we'll put one more underneath here as well. So I'm going to hit ring and connect, and we'll slide this one up towards the top. So this just gives us enough edge loops that when we go to skin this section of the leg, this will help with the way this leg deforms as he's walking. Alright, so let's go ahead and weld the two halves together. So I'm going to take this side, let's delete open subdivision. We want to unfreeze this half, so let's just open up the layer explorer. And then from the list we can unfreeze the frozen box 2. Okay, we'll name this pants once we attach them. And you can just check, make sure you've named your body. So I've got Bob body. You could also name it Bob shirt, doesn't matter. This could be Bob legs or pants. I'll just name it pants. So we're going to take this half here, convert it to editable poly to remove the instance. And then we'll go back here to the original. We'll hit attach, attach them together, go to the front view, select all the verts down the center, and then weld them. Okay, so we're going to open up weld settings, and again just right click, tap up once, make sure it's the lowest threshold, and then click OK, and then it should be good. So we can add open subdivision again, and then we can start pushing things around. Okay, so we want to fix this lumpy area here, so we're going to have to push stuff around there. We're going to want to pull this area back down here and try to flush that out. So let's just right click and isolate so that it's isolated away from the reference images for now, and then we'll just start pushing and pulling verts and trying to fix this stuff. So we'll go to editable poly, and we can start by taking the edge loop in the middle here, and we'll just kind of drop it down. You can turn on show end result, but we'll pull this down a bit, and we'll probably have to start rounding this whole section out here. And I might grab the vertex in the very middle here and even the legs and just kind of push this stuff down a bit. So just remember to work on both sides at the same time. Okay, so this whole section here, we're going to sweep that back in a minute. But let's just have a look at areas like this where we can just quickly pull the verts out to round that out. I'll get this part at the top here. And eventually we're going to want to start lining this up with the shirt at the top as well. Okay, so with show end result turned on, this is what it looks like so far. Let's go to the left view and then we'll end isolate. And let's just start pulling this up towards the top of the shirt here. So we can start by grabbing all the verts up here, and we're going to start lining this up to the direction of the drawing. So we'll rotate those back and we'll pull them up and start fitting this underneath the shirt. So we're definitely going to want to add another edge loop here, but we'll push this up first so it tucks underneath the shirt. You can turn off show end result. We'll just double click this edge loop here. You can hit Alt X if it helps to see through, and then we'll push this up and start rotating that back as well. Okay, so you can see the shape of the pants in the drawing. We want to try to match that a bit better. And I'm going to push this up a little further because we're going to add one more supporting edge loop through here as well. So we'll hit ring and we'll connect another one in here right in the middle, and then we'll just make sure that they're spread out enough. So turn on show end result and then push these out. Okay, so this area in here, we're going to start pushing that around. We might pull the upper part of the leg out a bit so that it's more flush with the front of the body. So we can grab these verts here, start pushing this out a bit. That's going to kind of fix this weird dimple. And then we're starting to get a better shape in here. So if I turn off show end result, you can see where we might need to pull things around here. Remember to work on both sides, so hold control and select both and just scale verts towards each other. This way we don't need to use symmetry. Okay, so in here, probably a dimple in the legs, so we'll just pull those verts out as well. Start pulling this back a bit here so it starts to tuck under. Okay, again, we're just kind of sculpting at this point. So any areas like this where the legs are kind of sticking out, we're either going to push those verts back in or we're going to pull the body out to match it. Okay, so if I was to go to the front view, hit Alt X, you can see here we've got room to scale these verts outside of it. Just trying to line up to the drawing again. And I think I'll take these ones that are sticking out on the leg and I'll just try to pull them in a bit. Same with these ones underneath. Alright, so we'll turn on show end result, and this is where we're at with the pants so far. And if I go to the front view, You can see the shirt looks like it's pretty high up. Okay, so we've matched it pretty close in the drawing on the left view, but in the front view, looks like his shirt's too high. So we can go up and fix that. Just grab the shirt and we'll kind of pull these bottom verts down a bit. So you can do this by just grabbing these verts, pull them down a little bit, make the shirt longer, and then go up to the next row. Just make sure everything's spaced out properly. You can double click the edge loop and do it that way. Oops. Let's try to make sure that there's an even gap between most of the quads here. And then make sure with open subdivision turned on, it still looks good. So if you do pull the shirt down, you can look around and make sure that it fits with the pants well. At this point, you can kind of push and pull things. You want to make sure that it conforms nice and tight. Okay, so you can see how that looks nice and round now just by pushing a few verts around. And again, you can scale them away to avoid using symmetry. And then if we look at the pants now, so we'll put Alt X to make the shirt see-through. And then in the left view, we'll just pull the pants down a bit. We've got them up too high now, so we don't need them to be up that high. And then we'll adjust each edge loop underneath and just try to make sure everything is smooth again. Alright, so that's pretty close to done. We could still go around, and there's little dimples in the legs where we can pull some of these verts out. You can see them if you keep show end result turned on. We just want to kind of pull these parts out. Just toggle this on and off. Try to keep the edges going straight down the leg here. So we'll just push these out. And it's really just taking your time and finessing at this point. Try to make sure it's as smooth as you can get it. Maybe push these out a bit. And then we've got something like this. All right, so we're going to call it for the legs and say that those legs are done at this point. Again, I'm going to throw on different material, just a default gray material for now. I'm going to change the color of the object to black so that when I deselect it, the edges show up black like this. We can hit Alt X on the upper body and then just kind of step back and have a look at your edges. You can start doing some test renders, hit Shift Q, and just make sure you don't see any weird dimples or anything in here. So if you see anything creasing, this is where you want to go in and just try to fix areas that are creasing or look bad. Okay, so in here, these edge loops at the bottom might be creating a crease. And we can even take these and maybe pull them down a bit, just to spread this out from the top. I'm going to isolate this one more time. Just have one last look around the back here. Just try to pull out any dimples that I can see. And we'll do another render. Okay, so you can see just the little tweaks are fixing most of the dimples and creases and weird edges that I'm finding. So it's really just a matter of taking your time and going through to fix these things. So right here I want to spread this out because I can see in the render it's causing a bit of an issue. Okay, so that cleans up nice when you start pushing those verts out and making sure that the edges are wrapping smoothly around the mesh. Okay, so it's worth it to spend the time just fixing, pushing things around, and cleaning up the mesh. Okay, so I'll just render from the back here too and make sure it looks good back here. Okay, so I could pull some of this out, but he's got kind of a flat bottom at the back, which is fine. You can leave it like that. Or if you want, you can start pulling the legs back a little bit here. So we'll take these parts here, pull this back a little bit, and just try to round out the back end a bit better. Even drop this part down a bit, and then if I do that, I'm going to want to go around and create kind of a curve here, and then adjust this whole curve wrapping around the leg. Alright, so that's a bit better. And if I hit render again, it's alright. So again, it's a little bit flat, but we could easily fix that just by grabbing a couple edges here and pulling them out a little bit, give it more of a round shape back there. We don't want to go too far, it might start looking pretty silly. But up to this point, I think we're pretty much done with the pants. I know I said that once already, but it's really worth it to go around and just tweak things and try to get it as perfect as possible. Okay, so we can get away with this low poly mesh, which is going to be easy to skin and rig. And we just subdivide it like this instead. And this is without lighting too. Once we put the lights in, a lot of these creases will disappear, the small creases that we're seeing in here. But if you can fix most of these now, it's going to be better. So it really is worth spending the time to just kind of pull these edges out and make sure that your edge loops are curved all the way around. Any of these flat areas, this is what's going to cause the pinching or the weird creasing. So just pull them out a bit. Alright, so that's looking pretty good now. And if I right click and isolate, you can see where we're at with the shirt and the pants. If we need to make any major adjustments, we can still do that later, but this concludes modeling the body and the pants. We're going to do the hands and feet next, and once we get the hands and feet in there and everything's in here, we'll just go over the whole thing again. We'll make sure everything lines up and scales properly before we unwrap it. So if we need to scale these arms out, maybe they're a bit short, it's hard to tell until we get the hands in there. Once we get the hands and feet in there, we'll do the final adjustments, and then we'll unwrap the whole character. So again, make sure you save. And then that's the end of this video.